thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for attending this session as well. Hopefully, a lot of you are back to a somewhat normal routine, but I know a lot of us are still living out the lingering effects of the ongoing pandemic situation. That being said, I am sure a lot of you, like me, are still working from home, so I deeply apologize in advance if you hear any screaming kids, barking dogs, or my next door neighbor trying to learn Stairway on guitar. If any of that happens, I will do my best to work around it. At any rate, I did a presentation several months ago now on Dynamo, and that was more of a deeper dive into the software than might have been appropriate. So for this webcast, I will focus more on the what and the why rather than a slightly rushed how-to or show and tell. So after we discuss Dynamo, we will talk about the Dynamo Player as well as Generative Design. My goal is to explain a little bit about each topic and give you a better understanding of how they build on top of each other, and more importantly, how they can help you with your business. All right. So let's elaborate on the topics at hand a little bit and take a quick look at our agenda for today. I am going to do my best to convey to you what Dynamo actually is and why I think you need to consider adopting some Dynamo workflows into your design and production operations. I plan to discuss some of the basics, but we'll then move on to some of the things that I think are excellent from a time-saving productivity standpoint, as well as just some pretty cool stuff it can do. If you haven't seen any of this before, I'm super excited for you because when I first saw this, I knew that everything I ever wanted to do with Revit but couldn't was now all of a sudden possible. I realized that if there was something I could imagine doing, there's a good chance it was achievable with Dynamo. I'm not going to tell you it can do everything, but the possibilities are literally infinite. Now, you might see some stuff that just looks too complicated for either you or your users, and that's cool. Trust me, don't exit the webcast just yet. We have you covered as well. The Dynamo Player is what will allow any Revit user to run a Dynamo script from within Revit. After we take a look at the Dynamo Player, we will then move on to the third part of our presentation, which is all about generative design. And generative design, a new feature to the software. In fact, it comes already installed with Revit 2021 and includes some great demo scripts right out of the box. After all of that, I'll then show you some resources available, and of course, I always save some time at the end for Q&A. And since some of these topics are so new, if there's anything I can't answer or we run out of time, I will be sure to follow up with you after the presentation. So Typically, we have somebody monitoring the question pane during the presentation. That's not going to be the case today, so I will take care of them at the end before we wrap up. Okay, so one more thing before I forget. Dynamo and Generative Design actually come included with the full version of Revit. So if you are using Revit by itself or in the AEC collection, not only can you use them at no additional cost, but they come installed and ready to go with a standard Revit installation. So it always seems logical to start off a presentation with a definition of the topic at hand. In this case, if someone asked me, hey, what is Dynamo? That would be really hard to answer in 1 or 2 sentences. Dynamo is so much, and it can do an infinite amount of tasks. But I feel like I owe you at least a high level overview of what we'll be talking about before we dive in. So essentially, Dynamo has access to the Revit API, which means it can utilize and extract data to be manipulated in a way that is not available via the Revit user interface. So in a typical workflow, Dynamo is going to take data from some database source like Revit, Excel, or even Dynamo itself, then manipulate in a meaningful way, and then push it back some other desired output. So some of you might look at this and think, well, that sounds like computer programming. And you are correct. Dynamo is all about programming, but it is actually a very user-friendly type of programming called visual programming. Uh, I think when most of us think about what computer programming is, you envision somebody typing thousands of lines of text and are required to know special coding languages. Well, that is true. There is also graphical or visual programming. If you are not familiar with visual programming, all it means is that you are actually still doing computer programming, except that it lets us author our programs with very user-friendly illustrations on the screen instead of hundreds of lines of text. In this example on the slide, I was able to create a model of the arch by stringing a few nodes together. So if you take someone like me who has literally zero programming background, I was able to quickly learn how to put a simple program like this together. It is very intuitive for people like me with a graphical or spatial mindset. It's basically just like taking pieces of a puzzle and arranging them on the screen and seeing the results sometimes in real time right in front of your face on the screen. However, if you are more of a traditional programmer and you prefer the thousands of lines of code approach, I have more good news for you. You can totally still do that. In fact, a lot of workflows will actually require Python codes. I do not plan to show anything that will require you to author or edit any Python codes. Um, Everything I personally work on and plan to show today will be totally completed with graphical nodes. So, not to oversimplify this, but when I am referring to a program or programming, all I am looking for is a set of instructions. This slide uh, shows two types of programs, a visual program as well as a textual program. Both of these programs produce an algorithm with a similar, or I guess I should say identical result. They will both produce a circle with a center point at 0, 0 and a radius defined by the distance from the center point to the coordinate 5.6 in the x direction, and I think we were at 11.5 in the y direction. So let's take a look at this slide and see how visual programming would look inside Dynamo. You can see that we have our algorithm on the left and our results displayed on the screen for us to see. So the big difference, in my opinion, between the visual and the textual program is that the visual characteristic to programming lowers the barrier to entry and frequently speaks to designers. So to recap, Dynamo falls in the visual programming arena, but like I did already mention, we can still use the thousands of lines of text programming in the application as well. Okay, so let's take a look here. All right, so why is visual programming in Dynamo so easy or intuitive? Well, thanks for asking. There are a lot of reasons, but the biggest is that the software contains a giant library of nodes that you can use. So for almost any operation you need to complete, there is a node available in the library out of the box. Now on screen are just a few that are commonly used, but the software comes with thousands of them. And these can be thought of as the building blocks of your program or the puzzle pieces, to borrow the analogy from before. Okay, so thank you for sitting patiently through that initial little spiel. I am now going to show you some of what Dynamo can do for you. So these are some of the things I love about Dynamo. First of all, it can do things with Revit that I just couldn't do before. Dynamo enabled access to data stored inside of Revit that users like me had no previous way of accessing. I'm sure there are some programmers out there that didn't have any issues before, but for the average architect, engineer, drafter, or designer, we now have the tool set we needed. So the next part about Dynamo that I love is automation. Dynamo can automate tasks for us. And the benefits are actually threefold here. We can save time, ensure accuracy, and thoroughness of our work. Tasks that would take hours to complete manually can be done in seconds. You no longer have to worry about precision. As an example, if I have to manually enter the same piece of data 1,000 times, there's a great chance I will have a typo in at least a few of those instances. So Dynamo is going to do whatever we tell it to do. Um, so you can avoid precision errors that would occur with repetitive manual entry. And then the third benefit is thoroughness. If I needed to manually update a parameter on every column in my project, there's a good chance I could miss or overlook one. However, if I tell Dynamo to do this for me, I can ensure a far superior result. All right, so I plan to show a few examples of what Dynamo can do for you and your team, and I broke it down into three major categories, and there will be some crossover. And of course, there are other broader ways Dynamo can help, but these are the ones that I really wanted to highlight for you today. Okay, so this first example of what Dynamo can do for you is something I have used myself. In fact, I recently used it for a consulting project we were working on with a client that needed several dozen sheets created in their Revit templates. Now, even if it was only one template, I would have still used Dynamo, but for this particular client, they had several Revit templates since they were a large full service design firm with architectural and all of the engineering disciplines. So I was able to take a list they had of all the required sheets and import it into Dynamo in a matter of minutes. Um, I had sheets named and numbered in every template. So let's take a look at how this process worked. The first slide shows the raw data I had to work with coming from Excel. So the Excel spreadsheet was probably like hundreds of lines on the screen here. It's just a few dozen. This slide shows what my Dynamo script looks like. Basically, once I had this done, all I had to do was browse to where I saved the Excel file, open up the Revit model that I needed, click run, and the sheets were created in my model. So let's see what that looked like here. So inside Revit, you can now see in the project browser on the left, whole set of sheets were added to the project file, numbered and named accordingly. All right, so here is an example of something I did with Dynamo that was more helping me solve a design problem. So this kind of falls under that second category we'll we'll put this in the computational design category. So I wanted to make a sculptural tunnel that was basically an extruded ellipse, but I wanted to have a twisting effect. So here is a series of slides that show how I was able to easily realize this vision by using Dynamo. So I started off by making a simple ellipse, made some copies of the ellipse at a set increment, so this is where it gets interesting from a Dynamo perspective. What I really wanted to do was rotate that last ellipse at a 90, then have the intermediate ellipses rotate at an even increment. This is where I was able to use the sequencing capabilities of Dynamo to say, I want a sequence of numbers starting at 0, ending at 90 with a 2.25 degree increment. I was able to easily generate that list of dozens of numbers. Plus, I was then able to easily apply that list to set the rotation of each individual shape. The rest of this was pretty straightforward. Found a node that would create a surface by lofting all the shapes. Another node to give it a thickness. And chopped it into 5-foot sections and removed every other segment. A few more nodes to do that. And import the shape into Revit and right off into the sunset here. Only kidding, we've got lots more to cover here today. All right, so the next kind of topic that I want to touch on here is all about integration. So this feature is relatively new, but it is pretty sweet because it allows you to access a mapping database, find your site location on the map, and in a lot of cases will allow you to import the building footprints. This allows us to quickly add site context into our Revit models. So on the screen, you can see we've got Dynamo in the background, the Dynamo Maps interface, which can be found right from the edit menu. And in the background, you can see I've already pulled in the building surfaces. So the next thing I did was I just added a few nodes here to give the buildings a height and imported them into Revit. And this is what it looks like inside your familiar Revit environment. This is a 3D Axon view. And without any extra work, I have a site plan I can use, as well as some context instantly added to my camera views. So let's say you have a last minute client meeting, or you just want to see for yourself without much time and effort. By adding this site context, you can really help yourself and your clients visualize the project on the site. So another great integration feature of Dynamo is that um, I can actually let it run while I'm working in Revit and have it do work for me in real time while I'm working on my model. So let's switch over to Revit and take a look at a couple examples of this. So a little disclaimer, since I am going to be doing this live, there's always a chance I'll crash the software. And I will say that if we do get a crash, it is not because there's a bug in the software. It is probably because I told Dynamo to do something I shouldn't have told it to do. So let's take a look here. All right, so bring up Revit here, open up one of our files here. So this particular workflow I'm going to show you. Oh, hey, I opened up the wrong one, but that's okay. I had one that had already been upgraded, but that's all right. It's a small file. Let's say I'm doing some space planning here and I want to massage the floor plan a little bit and move some spaces around. Well, if I go to the Manage tab here, launch Dynamo, see it'll open up for us in a new window. I might have to drag it over here because I'm running dual monitors. Oh, there we go. So I can open up this special graph that I've been working on. And I'm not going to walk you through all of the nodes in here, what they do, but essentially I can set this to automatic. And when I do that, you can see that it changes the color fill on the rooms to this my neutral color here. But what it's now going to do for me is just continue running in the background. I'm going to minimize it and then just pretend it's not even running and say I need to move some walls around. So what I can do is maybe I'll just move this wall and door a few feet. And what happened is Dynamo is working in the background and it noticed, well, hey, I no longer have compliance on these rooms. So it applied a different color fill for the conference room. It's not big enough now based upon the criteria that I'm looking after. So it shows up with a red fill. And on the other hand, this office is now too big. So it gets a green fill. So that's one way you can have Dynamo working right with you as you're working inside of Revit. Um, let's see how we're doing on time. I think we have time for another example here. Let me close out of this. And this is great. There's sample file that comes with the software. I'll show you where to find this in a minute. So this is just a little sample file. And so you guys can play around with this if you wanted to. Let's launch Dynamo. Go to the Manage tab. Click Dynamo. And inside Dynamo, there's a set of sample files here. I'm going to open up the, which one is it? It's the Revit Adaptive Component Placement. There it is. Okay, So when I open this up, right here on the screen, it'll give you a link to find the file, the Revit file that we were working in. So you would have to open this first. It's in your program data. Here's the directory. But once you have that, look what happened. The script is already running. And what it does is, you might not have noticed it, but we had 3 little model lines in here, and it placed these trusses in the model based upon these model lines. So you can actually manipulate those model lines, and the trusses, since they're adaptive components, will update in real time. So those are the integration examples I wanted to show. I'll go ahead and exit out of Revit and Dynamo here. And let's go back to our slideshow. So there is one more feature that I love to point out, and that is that Dynamo is an open source platform, which means that the source code is open for anybody who cares to see it and make modifications they need. In my opinion, this is what has really created a large community of Dynamo collaborators that openly share ideas and help each other solve problems. So you will see the manifestation of this open and sharing community in the form of packages. Dynamo has a package manager built in that will help users search and find packages that have been shared by other users. A lot of these packages contain enhancements to nodes that already existed, or even new nodes that hadn't been built yet. So users can easily find and download these packages and immediately use the content. If you like creating and sharing as well, it is very easy to create and publish your own packages. Okay, so I hope the examples and features gave you a better understanding of what Dynamo can do for you and your team, but you might be sitting there thinking, hey Dan, that's all well and good, but I don't want all of my users to feel like they have to learn how to use Dynamo. Please tell me there's a way for my users to be able to utilize the power of Dynamo, but from within Revit. Well, good news for you. This is where Dynamo Player takes the baton over from Dynamo and can run scripts right inside of Revit with no need to even open Dynamo. Basically, all you need to do is click a few buttons on your script inside Dynamo, save the file to your player folder, and it will show up in the player and is ready for use. So this is kind of what the Dynamo player is going to look like inside of Revit on the Manage tab, and then there's a button for it. And let's see here. So some of the best features of the player are that you might have some users that have no interest in building their own programs. So with the player, they can utilize the features of Dynamo, but in an extremely user-friendly interface. Even if you are a veteran with Dynamo, the player is amazing because it makes it super convenient to run scripts you already have. So you don't need to launch Dynamo. You can save time and you don't need to remember where the scripts are located. And it's just very easy to use, which I'll show in the next slide. So one more bonus is that some very useful scripts come installed right out of the box. I didn't put a line item for this, but one of the things I love is that there's a button that opens the directory in Windows Explorer where all of the scripts are stored. So this makes it incredibly easy to add more scripts to the player. Okay, so here is a side-by-side comparison of what a script would look like inside Dynamo versus the player. It's the same thing, but you can see inside Dynamo, it might not be immediately clear to the user how to run the script. However, in the player, there are just a few settings that you can easily modify and then run the program. I might also add that if you do need to modify a script, you can click a button and it will open the script inside Dynamo so you can edit and return to the player. But you'll need to exit out of Dynamo before the player will run the script. You can really only run one or the other. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, so now that you have a little bit of an understanding of Dynamo and how you can leverage that inside of Revit, let's move ahead to the next part of this presentation. So generative design is not just a flashy new tool that has been added to the software. It is actually a process that allows us to select important factors that matter to us, and we can work with the computer to generate and analyze outcomes to make better choices, ultimately leading to better design outcomes. All right, so this does bring a pretty radical shift in standard design practice. Historically, we have relied strictly on the human brain to create, analyze, and settle on the best designs for our work. But we now have the ability to use our computers and have the software generate multiple outcomes based on what we tell it are the most important factors. This allows us to very quickly generate scores of possible outcomes and quickly find the best of the best solutions, or in some cases, find solutions we might have never found on our own. To put it another way, generative design can be thought of as a form of artificial intelligence. It has the ability to quickly explore multiple solutions to a design problem and can return a wide range of alternatives that are optimized and fully validated. Once the outcomes have been generated, the designers can choose the best option or options based upon the performance of each iteration with respect to their most critical criteria, such as density, views, proximities, and even egress. So what does this all mean for building designers like yourselves? Well, it really is just an exciting combination of what you decide is important for your designs, while also being able to utilize the software to come up with solutions that meet your requirements to varying degrees. Um, the speed at which the software can generate each option is extremely impressive, where it might take a human half a day or more to come up with a few schemes. You will see that we can now generate dozens or scores of options in a matter of minutes. Okay, and this is a nice recap of all of the workflow benefits you and your team will see. The first bullet point on this slide really touches on something that I think needs to be highlighted here, and that is that generative design is all about possibilities. So that's what excites me the most, is the endless potential that is now available. But at the same time, I don't want to take anything away from the other major benefits that you can see on this slide. For me, I love the fact that we can now base our decisions off of actual data in addition to our intuitive design capabilities. All right. And then, of course, we have the business benefits as well. Happy clients will hopefully lead to repeat and even more business. Um, and since we have a better understanding of the pros and cons of our designs earlier on in the process, we can avoid costly changes that might have occurred once a scheme has been significantly developed. So I will give you another second or two to look over this slide. Okay. So now that we have a good understanding of generative design when it comes to the process, how does this all work as a tool within our Revit software? So let's take a look at this slide, and you will notice again there's a button uh, to create a study on the Manage tab, and this is in Revit 2021. When you launch the tool, it opens up a dialog box that is reminiscent of the Dynamo Player. And to this point, it really isn't much different just yet. There are several studies preloaded, and we will stick to those for this webcast, because if you launch this on your screen, you will see the same thing that I'm seeing here. Okay, so for this example, I'll just kind of walk you through a standard little workflow here, and I might show this inside Revit in a little more detail in a minute here. But I chose the workspace layout feature, and I sketched in some walls, uh, windows, a door, put a room in there, and then a desk. That was it. Pretty simple data set I sketched out very quickly. So after I clicked on the workspace layout feature, I can create a study that optimizes my desk layouts based upon several different criteria. So let's bring Mario back here. I would first have to select the room, and then you just click inside of Revit, and then I have this little desk family out here. So you'd click this and then choose your desk. And some of the variables that I can work with are desk rotation. I've got it set to a -90 or a +90. In the spacing, I want to limit it to between 10 to 16 feet between rows. And my goals are going to be to to minimize exit distance, but maximize views to outside and the number of desks. And then I click the generate button, and you get the next screen, which lets you explore the outcomes. And yeah, if we have time, I might run one of these for you because it happens pretty quick. I would say the first few options start to appear on your screen after like 30 seconds or so, and you can start to explore these outcomes. So essentially what is happening here is that the generative design tool is running a Dynamo script over and over again in the background, but we have this great user interface that will allow us to visualize all of these various iterations. You can sort the list. So let's say in my case, I want to sort by the max amount of desk, or maybe I want to sort by maximum row spacing. I can adjust the drop-down menu and sort ascending or descending. And when you select a thumbnail view, you can see how this individual scheme performs on the other criteria as well. So let's get Mario back here. Let's say I click on one of these. It will highlight the path. So it'll tell me the desk rotation here, that'll be plotted here. Then maybe the space between rows will be listed here, and it will show me how I score on all these. So I might be looking for one that's kind of in the mid range. And what I love is it comes up with things that I never would have thought of. Like I probably never would have thought of putting my desks at a -17-degree angle. So just little stuff like that is pretty awesome. Okay, so yeah, I mean, maybe you'll find one that is great in the total amount of desks, but it's terrible in views and distance to exit. In that case, you'll just move on and find another one. So you might find one that's got slightly less desks, but it performs much better in row spacing, views, and exit distance. So this is what the tool is helping you determine in a very, very efficient manner. So let's say you find the design that suits your criteria best and you want to explore it a little more. You can click the Create Revit Elements button. Let's go back a minute here. It's this button right here. Click on that. And you instantly have desks modeled in Revit. So right in this example, I used desks, but it could really be pretty much anything. I don't think there was a limit to the family type that I could choose there. Now, I know this example might seem pretty mundane, but actually something like this could be a huge help in finding ways to get people to safely return to their offices. We could find optimal layouts that maximize distances between rows and individual desks, as well as minimize travel distances. So, you don't have a user here passing 50 other users every time they need to go to the copy machine, just little things like that. Okay. All right, so, let me see where we're at here. Yeah, I think we're kind of at the point where I start to wrap up here, but um, yeah, maybe I could real quickly just run a study. So I've got my file here, click create study. So I'll just let this run so you can kind of watch it kind of work in the background a little bit. Workspace layout, selected the room, select the desk. I could tweak some of these settings if I wanted to, but we'll just click generate. So like I said, it's going to take about 30 seconds to kind of crunch through the first few iterations, but I think maybe I'll look at start kind of monitoring the questions just to save some time. Like I said, I usually keep it till the end here. All right. So let's see, just looking at the questions we had here, um, somebody said they weren't seeing it in their version of Revit. Yeah, it's got to be in 20, 21 for sure. So you can see on the screen, we're already starting to get some options already populating here. And this is where you can select, actually I'll switch the sorting here. Let's sort by number of desks. We can click on one of these line items and you can kind of follow, you can look at its path down here and see the gray line where it kind of performs here. And it's still running. It's still crunching through these. It is not done creating elements. We've already got 2 pages of options and it's going through this again. Here's your progress here. It's running through it 6 times so far out of 8 total. So we'll just let that keep running. All right. So you know what? Maybe we've got time to run one more real quick here. Oh yeah, you know what? Let's. I didn't settle on one that I wanted. So let's say we find the one we want. Looks good. I'm happy with it's kind of in the mid range here. I've got a lot of desks, and it performs pretty well for everything else. So I click Create Revit Elements, and you can see it's running. And there's my desks straight inside of Revit. Okay. Yeah, you know what? With that, maybe we can do one more here. I'll show you one more. Let's close out of our study here. Let's open up architectural template and go back to manage. We'll create a study. Let's do 3-box massing. And in the interest of time, I'll just kind of run this and see what we got here. Let's say I'm looking for a massing. Maybe I want to maximize floor area ratio or minimize facade. Let that run. You know what? While that's running, why don't we do a little wrap? Oh, actually, that went a little quicker than I thought. So again, you know, we can click on these and explore the different outcomes. We can sort by surface area. Let's say we want the surface area to be minimized. You could sort ascending, or I guess descending. Find the option that you want. Click Create Revit Elements, and then push it into the project. Of course, we'd probably need to turn on our massing. There we go. All right. So let's jump back over to our slideshow here. And let's take a look at some resources I pulled together for you. So since generative design is so new, we don't have any classes yet, but since it's all built off of Dynamo, that is a great place to start. You might be thinking to yourself, so how can we get ourselves and our teams started with Dynamo today? Well, I'm excited to share with you that we now offer a 1-day intro to Dynamo course. You can check out the website for dates and a class syllabus. I don't think we currently have any classes on the calendar, but we are always happy to add them based on demand. So if you don't see one on the schedule, just reach out and we will be happy to add a few to the schedule, put a few dates out there. And I should also mention that we do still have a 50% off all e-training promotion running through the end of the month. I don't have all the details on that. So again, you will need to follow up with your sales team, but I am pretty sure if you can purchase now, the class can be taken at a later date. I don't think the class needs to be taken this month. I should also mention that if you don't see a class that matches exactly what you're looking for, we're always happy to come up with a customized training solution. And again, you could reach out to either me or your Hagerman and Company account representative, and we would be happy to work with you on a custom syllabus for training. So I'll take another thorough look at the question panel, and actually it looks like I kind of ran out of time here. But if you did ask a question, I'll be sure to take a look at it and follow up with you via email, because that should be recorded. So yeah, thank you all very much for joining, and see you next time.